they're so aware of the fact that they're being interviewed that they kind of watch what they say and.
Anyway, we just got started here on Let's Talk Racing. We've been doing a little chatting here on Periscope with some of the people here asking us questions. Some of the interviews that we've had, which ones were some of the best ones we had. For me, there's a lot of them. I'd tell you what, Kenny Wallace, when we had Kenny Wallace on the show, he was funny as hell.
Good for,
Kyle
good
Petty,
for him.
Kyle Petty was good.
Well, yeah, obviously. We got married the other day.
Yep, that's right. You got
Did you
married
see
the
the
other
picture
day.
of his wife?
Huh?
Did you see the picture they posted of his wife?
Not yet. I could probably pull that
She's
up.
a honey. But you would expect nothing else
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
from him.
if you weren't, if you wasn't, then he's not working hard enough.
He hadn't got to work hard.
Who's
He
the,
never had to work hard.
somebody follow up said, who's the hardest interview you've ever done?
Oh, the Bush brothers.
The Bush brothers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
What made them so hard?
They didn't like the media. Still don't. I think Kyle may be a little bit better now
Since he won the championship?
because he has to be.
Yeah.
But they are very guarded, very reserved. They think it's an imposition to talk to us. Tony's kind of that way. Your boy Tony's kind of that way. There is a ride. Yeah, the ride's apparently got a new PR firm.
Oh yeah?
They emailed me yesterday and said, you know, would your there he is, Collin Morgan. Would your publication be interested in writing a story about the ride? If necessary, we'll provide information. And I wrote back, I said, thank you very much, but I said, I've done the first 21, and I'm going to do the next year's. Maybe I can help you people. I said, there's not a whole lot you can tell me. I think I made a comment on Kyle's post.
On the merit, which page though?
No, the one with the car. No, go the other way.
Are you talking about the picture?
Yeah. I think I may have had a comment in there somewhere. In fact, I know I did.
Inappropriate or?
Oh, no.
Hey, that car looks like it's got a big back seat.
It may be a little hard. Maybe a little hard to find yet, since there's over almost 1,200 comments in here.
Yeah,
We got time.
most of them from ride people, I bet you. Anyway, I'll read it when I get home tonight.
Rock and roll.
He's really a good guy. He is, and Autoweek was so happy with my Eli Gold story, they want me to do a midwinter sit down with Richard. And we have not done a basic Richard Petty interview in probably 15 years.
Wow, that's kind of
So
crazy.
I'm gonna go to Charlotte or Mooresville sometime soon and sit down with Richard for a couple hours, maybe a couple of hours.
Maybe a couple, if not longer.
Yeah, and I'll tell him, hey,
Oh, Richard, once he gets going, he loves it.
oh, Richard will talk to you. He'll talk to you till your ears fall off.
You know how Richard likes to stick around till all the fans get autographs.
Yeah.
Now here's the payback. You got to stick around till he finishes talking.
That's fine.
But he's like a lot of. That's one of the things I've noticed. Remember all the shows they did with all the old timers? They never had Richard in any of them. You know, when they would have 7 or 8 of them or 10 of them, and they actually did a cassette video cassette grouping, like 3 or 4 of them, where they had a bunch of them. One behind
I
the
thought
other.
I had seen one with.
I don't remember ever seeing.
I thought I
him.
saw one that he was on because he and Pearce started complaining about the Daytona race where Pearson backed off and made Richard pass him and then beat him.
On the
They
slingshot.
kind of argued about that a little bit, gently.
Gently.
Yeah,
At this age, they don't do it.
yeah.
Something about they said there's some. Oh, Nick said there's a NASCAR reunion on YouTube. Don't know what that is. Give me a little more info on that, Nick. Send me a tweet.
So you're talking about one of those sit-down things they did where they had a lot of the previous drivers. I'm trying to think who maybe the moderator was, but they had them all kind of just sitting around telling stories and all that.
One of the networks, I think, produced a bunch.
Oh.
Might have been
What if that was TNT or
might
who
have
it
been
was,
TNN or ESPN
Speed
maybe.
or something.
Yeah, I remember they had, I know they had, I think Richard was part of at least one of them. And Petty and Buddy Baker and Benny. Allison was probably there.
Daryl,
Yeah,
Waltrip, I know he
Walter
was
was
there.
probably there. And they just, you know, let's talk about the old days. Benny, I think probably Mike Joy was a moderator.
Probably, yeah.
Somebody like that.
Mhm.
So, I don't know.
It's pretty interesting. Maybe not so much for you because you've been around so much of it, but
Well, a lot
for
of
people
it,
that don't know a lot of the behind the scenes stories.
yeah, there's a lot of it I didn't know. I mean, things happen. Things happened back in the day I wasn't always, you know, aware of. I remember one story. Oh, Dale Inman told a funny story that the first year they raced at Dover. They raced at Dover on a Sunday after racing in Daytona on Thursday, because back then July 4th was the day.
Yeah, whenever it fell,
Yeah.
then they had to race.
And they all left Daytona at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in a convoy. This is in '69, before all of '95 was done. And they had to come up the coast, drove all night, and got to Dover, I guess, probably Friday morning. No, they raced in Daytona on a Friday. They got to Dover on Saturday and didn't do anything until Sunday. They practiced, qualified, and raced on Sunday. And nobody had ever even seen the racetrack till the day they got
Oh.
up there.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
That was the
It was
first
the
ever
first one
Dover?
ever, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, stuff like that. Yeah, we drove all night. We stopped at Waffle House in, you know, Little Washington. And we stopped in back then, the Bay Bridge Tunnel. Well, yeah, it was. The Bay Bridge Tunnel was built by then, because I crossed it to go up there. And they remember going across that big long bridge. So, yeah, they all had good stories.
Well, half the time those guys back in the early days would drive the same car to the track, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That they're
Oh, yeah.
going to use in the race.
They kind of got away from that probably in the
Started
maybe
to
early
go up.
50s, something like that.
Start putting it on the trailer and
Yeah.
hauling down.
But it'd be just an open trailer.
Open trailer, yeah.
Just
Yeah.
nothing.
Just like the one sitting out back.
Yeah, just to get them there.
Now, were there times
brought my
where
broken car back from Dover one year?
they would actually go to a dealer and pick up
You hear
a
that?
stock car?
You hear that story a lot, and again, I don't think that happened much beyond the early 50s. You hear people say, "Yeah, I went to the dealership in Charlotte and asked them if I could test drive an Oldsmobile or whatever, and you know, took it to the racetrack and ran it and cleaned it up and took it back." And I don't like it. No.
I don't think
But I don't think it happened much. And I think any self-respecting dealer who had a dealership in town where there was a race about to be probably knew, I better not let this guy have a car for a test drive. So,
Kale and a show car at Daytona, something like that. Somebody was putting on here.
yeah, you've heard those stories.
What was it? I was talking to a gentleman one day. I was doing some work down in North Carolina, and we started talking about racing, and he was telling me about when he used to do some racing, and he'd quit racing, but he had a couple of cars, and I think he said like Pearson or somebody like that, or Allison had borrowed a car. Well, they were going to pay for it, and they said, "Well, let me use it for this race, and I'll send you a check." Well, he never sent him the check, and then all of a sudden, one of his buddies called him and said, "You need to look at the Daytona 500 on TV." He turned it on. There was his car winning the Daytona 500. And he joked about it. He says, "You know what? That son of a bitch still ain't sent me a damn check for that car."
Yeah.
So,
Well, first Daytona was in '59, so it had to have been early '60s.
yeah. He
Which
was
sounds a little bit like a fish story. I mean, if it's 1960 and you don't know where your car is and it's just one Daytona, you deserve to lose that car.
From all the stuff we talked about, I think it was on the up and up because he knew a lot of stuff about a lot of people.
Okay.
He's also the East Coast distributor for pretty much most. He's the broker for most all of the auctions, car auctions, supplied. So, and he's got like a 10,000 square foot home where I visited him at. His pool house is probably bigger than your and my house put together.
Well, that wouldn't take much. Certainly not in my case.
Well, I'm just saying, he had a beautiful place.
How are you down there on the Gold Coast? I thought you had a big old place.
Oh, Lord, no.
Big old
I thought,
mansion.
I thought you were sitting on about 5,000 square feet.
Hell no. My backyard's bigger than my house. You know.
Mine is
Yeah,
too.
well, I was gonna say,
I got an acre, so.
but you got $1 million view though, right?
No, I got a house in front of me, but I can see the river between the houses.
Oh, okay.
No, it's very modest.
$500,000 view.
It is very modest, believe me.
I can't remember if I've ever been to your house or not. I almost thought I'd been to your house before.
I don't think so.
Fayetteville Motor Speedway, ever heard of that?
Fayetteville?
Yeah, I've heard of it. Dirt
Of
track.
course.
Yeah, I'm just doing the questions on the thing here. You can usually see them pop up on the TV on the side here. But you ain't got your glasses on.
That's
So.
a dirt track, I think, isn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's what Collin
Yeah.
said.
Yeah. I
Big
think the
dirt
World
track.
of Outlaws is coming there this year.
I've been to Fayetteville, but I never went to the track.
And maybe the, what is this, the late model series? So maybe the World of Outlaw late models, super
Yeah.
late models are coming there.
4/10 mile.
Dirt. Yeah.
4/10 mile dirt.
Yeah. All right, tell me again who we got tonight so I'll get excited.
Well, you got Liz calling in first. I better remind her real quick here. But, means I gotta. Vanessa, she said she likes late models. Hey, we all do. Anything that goes fast. And I'll give you Monty's number to call in a little bit. So what else, anything else going on?
Things is quiet this time of year.
Just football and basketball right now, mostly.
Yeah, but there's no, I mean, I think the Snowball Derby annually is probably the last race of the year. I mean, I don't know of anybody racing this time of year.
I saw some pictures popping up on Facebook of some people at some of the racetracks. Looks like they were having some other races. Apparently just not anything big.
I think there might be some legend car stuff going on in Vegas.
I think it was a Homestead test last weekend. But, you know, why would you test at Homestead now when you don't race there? Well, I know that you can transfer some information, but never understood the advantage of testing at one place when you don't race there for a year.
Yeah, last week we talked a lot about Christopher Bell. One of the questions said, what do we think about Christopher Bell, this DQ? And the guy that does the inspections out there at the Snowball Derby, he is very, very strict.
Yeah, we talked about that last week.
As I said, we talked about last week, and one of the comments was made that if his mother was out there and if she got caught cheating, he'd kick her out too. So that's how bad that was. Is that you, Liz?
Yes, it is.
All right. Go ahead and introduce yourself and give us a quick bio.
I'm Liz Snyder. I'm the tire girl for the 7 Cup Car at Tommy Baldwin Racing. I also change tires for Trucks and Xfinity as well.
Cool. How did you get into that? How did it come to
I've
be?
always been I've always just worked on cars, and a couple years ago I started working for Jennifer Jo Cobb as just a mechanic intern, and throughout the years just worked with other teams. When I left Jen's, I went and helped Derek Cook on the side. And through Derek, I met Jay Robinson. He owns the 62 Cup Car and owns the 94 truck. And once I started working with Jay, I did all of 2014 with Jay on his 66 Cup Car. I also pitted the Cup Car during the race along with doing tires. And I started out beginning of this year with Jay, and did tires for the 62 with Brendan gone, pitted it a couple times, and then that's when I came over to Tommy.
Cool.
Hey Liz, this is Collin Brown, local legend car driver in Virginia. So NASCAR is big on diversity, and what do you think teams can do to attract more women on to roles and on pit road?
I think just being more accepting. A lot of what I see is there's old school racers and the new school. Some of the old school have a harder time kind of getting used to women in the garage and working on the cars, and it takes a little while for some of them to see us as equals, just because they aren't used to seeing it around. But once they all kind of see that we're there to do our jobs, because there's been several girls that have just done it for publicity, and it kind of makes it harder for other girls because they have to see that we actually want to be there before they'll take us serious.
So, what do you find to be the most challenging thing about your job on pit road, or on a race, or just in general on a race weekend?
Usually my size is the biggest challenge I come up against because I'm a lot shorter than most of the guys in the garage, and especially with doing tires. The tire car is just about bigger than me most weekends. So it's usually a height thing. I can handle the weight of everything just because I work out enough, but it's sometimes hard for me to see over the top of the tires when I'm pushing them around the track.
All right.
What does a tire girl actually do?
I do everything that involves the tires. I order the tires for the team at the shop. I maintain all our rims. I make sure all my equipment's at the track. When I get to the track, I usually get 5 sets of tires for practice. I do all the measurements, get all the info off of them, set all the pressures, and then I put them in sets for practice. And I work with Tommy on what sets he wants to start the race with, what he wants to practice on, how he wants to go throughout the day. Once practice time comes, I give them a set of tires to start on. I do all the pressures. Every time the car comes in, I check all the pressures again, see what they're building to, check all the temperatures, and after practice, I kind of cycle through whenever he says, all right, we want stickers. I grab another set of tires to throw on the car, make sure they're all set. And I'll do wears in between practice, see how car's wearing, see if there's anything funny going on. And throughout the weekend, it's pretty much anything with the tires. Usually after qualifying, we'll get our race sets, which can range from 10 to 16 sets, depending on the track. And I'll put all those in sets throughout Saturday normally. And Sunday morning, I make sure they get to pit box, get laid out in the right order. And I set them as I get time throughout the day. I get them closer to the race pressures. And then during the race, anything with the tires is usually me. I'm running in circles, make sure everything's ready. I do all the wears during the race. And I usually I roll the left rear tire in and I catch the left rear that comes off.
Who has the final word? You mentioned Tommy Baldwin being the team owner and in some cases crew chief, but who has the final word on what tire pressure you use, which set goes when? Does the driver basically determine what he wants, or does the owner or crew chief determine what they want?
Usually we don't let the drivers know anything because then they start getting a little mental about it and say, well, I think that this needs to be done, and we can tell them it's done and not change a thing, and they'll think something changed. And with our deal, Tommy crew chiefs it along with owns it, so it's pretty much Tommy has final say-so on everything. I go to him for any pressure changes. If there's anything funny with the wear during the race, I report directly to him, and he'll give me directly what pressure changes he wants.
So when in the movie Days of Thunder, when the crew chief told Tom Cruise, "You got a special set of tires," that was probably, like you say, drivers don't know anything. It was probably just a regular set of tires, and Harry Hogg basically BS the driver into thinking he had more than he had. Do y'all ever do that? Do you ever tell your driver, you got the best set of tires we've got, go do what you can with them?
We usually don't with Alex just because the way that the tires are now is when they start falling off, they fall off big and you can feel it. So we'll usually tell hey, this is what you got to make through the end of the race. Like if we've had to make a lot of stops, Alex roughly knows how many sets of tires we have at the start of the race. So if we're doing 15 stocks and we only have 12 sets of tires, he knows that we're going to start putting scuffs on, and that changes how he drives it a little bit because the car might be a little bit looser just because the tires are worn out.
I guess track repaves must be a nightmare for you people. Or does Goodyear suddenly has something they like, and the track repaves, throws everything out the window? Is that correct?
Not necessarily, because we do a lot of tire tests with Goodyear throughout the year, and we share information. Like Goodyear gives us the engineering data every week about what their ideal pressure range is for ideal grip. So they give us an idea of what we're expected to see. It's usually the older tracks that we're kind of hesitant with because the older tracks will eat your tires up. And road courses are different as well, because at a road course we run right side tires all the way around the car. So sometimes there are problems with the left side seams coming apart just because it's wrapped the opposite direction of a normal left side tire.
Now, I'm sure you have to get into a lot of workouts. Now, how much do one of the tires weigh?
The ones with liners are about 75 pounds, and the ones without liners are 45, 50.
Okay. Y'all have a pretty good regimen for you to go through and doing your workouts to maintain your strength?
Mine's mostly involved on the pit crew side of things. I do a lot of upper body and core workouts just for changing tires, and that helps me a lot doing tires itself, because with changing I'm doing a lot of repetition, high strength stuff, so it kind of ties hand in hand with it, and that could be an advantage compared to some tire guys because they don't do the heat conditioning and the extra training that I do.
Now, somebody was asking me online here, when we know with regular cars, you go into a tire center somewhere, they throw some tires on your rims, they balance them and throw them back on. What does Goodyear do to do something to that equivalent? Do they balance the tires some way when they mount them, or is it, here it is, go with what you got?
Yeah, they're balanced every weekend just like a standard tire balance machine you'd see at any tire repair facility. They balance both sides of the wheels, and we'll take them out there, and if like the tire equalizes, like if the inner liner becomes the same pressure as the outer, we'll take it back to them and they'll remount it and then rebalance it. Or if we think a tire's out of balance, like the driver says he feels the shake, we can take it to them and then they'll rebalance it right there and let us know if it's off.
Cool.
Is Tommy Bowen a one-car team?
I don't know, is
Yes,
Tommy...
we are.
Huh?
We are a one-car team. He does have a partnership with Jay Robinson to run the 98 occasionally with Ryan Priest, but right now we're the 7-car.
With Alex Bowman?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
All right.
I'm glad you got that straight.
Yeah. Now, how did you get in? You mentioned earlier that you had worked on cars earlier. Anybody in your family before you into racing, did anybody lead you to it, or did you just kind of grow up thinking this might be nice to do?
I always watched racing with my dad, but being from California, there's not nearly as much racing out there. There's off-road and Baja racing, but we're up in the mountains, so there wasn't a whole lot of racing around us. So we mostly watched it on TV and would go to a couple races a year. And just as I got older, I got more interested in it. And my dad always supported me on doing it.
So what part of California?
I'm from Lake Tahoe.
Oh. I bet there's an In-N-Out burger there.
Oh, jeez.
There's some in Reno. That's about the closest one to Tahoe.
Absolutely. Yeah, Tahoe's nice. It's a nice place.
Now, all right, yeah, you said you took and watched a lot of racing with your father. Did you have anybody else that you mentored, or that was your mentor that you would take and follow?
I didn't really have anyone else. I was really close to my dad growing up, so it was always just me and him. And when I told him I wanted to move to North Carolina, he fully supported me. And every race he gets a chance to come to, he'll usually do 3 to 4 races a year with me and just watch me and help me. He was here last week, and I had to work one day in the shop, and he came to the shop with me and helped me tear apart rims to get repowder coated.
So in the shop, you have extra jobs other than at the track, where you're going, like you just said, you're going to have to take and tear down the tires and get all the rims powder coated. Anything else you get?
Yeah, normally during the season, I'll do everything from the toolbox, the generator, my tire cart, the hauler. I'll go through those and keep them clean throughout the week, just get them ready for the next week. And I also help out in the suspension room and the shocks department, just depending on wherever is needed, because I can do a lot of different things on these cars. So Tommy just has me fill in wherever once I get my stuff done.
You're gonna be the go-to girl on the team before too long and keep it up.
Yeah, but I've done that before, and it's not a bad place to be.
Somebody wants to know, what are the 3 best tips about getting into the sport?
Start from the bottom and work your way up, and don't let anyone tell you you can't, and just always work hard. That's the biggest thing I can enforce on people is you gotta work hard. You can't expect things to come to you. You have to be there fighting for everything you get.
Not to name any names, and I'm not going to, but a couple of years ago there was a lady who presented herself as being the first NASCAR over-the-wall pit crew lady, the first this, the first that. She was very much a self-promoter. I'm sure you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, the first race she did for NASCAR, I was changing the rear tires on.
Yeah. Does somebody like that, who clearly is not as serious about it as apparently you are, does somebody like that make it difficult when somebody comes along like yourself and you're serious about it and she's just kind of a self-promoter? You have to overcome anything in that situation?
She actually did a lot of damage to the sport because she was brought in by people that paid for her to do what she was doing. Companies that actually brought me saying, hey, here's money to do this with her. And once it was all said and done, she really didn't do anything. She did 3 races with my truck team, and she got fired off our deal for not showing up at the track. And after that, she really just fell off. And once she was gone, people kept saying, oh, are you her? You know, are you her? They always would talk about her. And truthfully, there has been probably 10 different female changers prior to her. And one of them has wins in Xfinity and had done a couple back-running cup deals and had wins in trucks. And she neglected to ever mention that there was other girls that had done it. So it hurt us in the long way because people were saying, oh, well, she was the first one. There's no way you were first, but there was a lot of us that were.
Yeah, I remember they made a big deal. I'm in the media, and they made a big deal out of her to us. They asked if we wanted to interview her, do we want to take photographs of her, we want to watch her perform. And most of us knew enough, or we sort of thought we knew enough, that it was kind of not exactly a scam, but certainly not as above board an effort as they wanted us to believe it was. So it's probably a good thing she's gone. That gives ladies like yourself an opportunity to do your thing without anybody comparing you to her. So I'm kind of glad she's not around anymore.
When did
Yeah,
Shauna...
it took about 2 years to really get rid of that image of her being the first one.
Yeah. And they named a holiday after her.
Oh, jeez.
That's what's amazing. They named it a holiday after her.
Didn't Shauna Robinson have an all-girl team, a pit crew or something like that?
I don't remember.
Yeah, back in the 80s, I believe Shauna had an entire female pit crew. And that was with Venerini.
Okay. Now, somebody was asking me, are you really comfortable with the job you're doing now? Or are you looking forward to something to move up to?
I'm comfortable doing everything with them. Before I did tires for the Cup Series, I was a suspension mechanic. And I'm a decal specialist. I can really do anything that's needed. With Tommy, he really needed a tire person because his was going to a different team. So I filled in and took that job. But I'm comfortable doing anything when it comes to these cars. With Jay Robinson, I did tires, and I was the only one that ever did decals. I would do all the graphs, all the vinyl, anything that was decal related, I handled.
Cool.
Is it inconceivable that there could be a female crew chief the next 5 years, 10 years?
I think it could happen sooner than that. There's a female over at Penske on the 22 Xfinity car, and she's their head engineer over in the Xfinity side, and she's not far off from becoming a crew chief.
How far off are you?
I don't know if I'll ever be a crew chief. It's not really my cup of tea to manage the guys. Like, I manage all the pit crew with Tommy, and that's a handful enough for me.
Okay.
Are there any schools, somebody was asking me, any schools you would recommend that they go to?
It all just depends on what they want to get into. If they want to be mechanic, there's NASCAR Tech. They teach you the fundamentals, but they really aren't a, here you go, you're going to get a job out here to get in the racing. They just teach you enough to be able to get an internship. And if you want to be on the pit crew side, there's Excalibur Pit School. That's actually where I practice and train 2 to 3 days a week. And their focus is becoming a pit crew member, changing tires, carrying tires, jacking, gassing. That's what their focus is.
Now, the Drive for Diversity section of NASCAR, now, do they have any crew members that they run through there, or is it strictly
I think it's drivers only.
drivers only?
I think.
They have a partial crew system with Phil Horton, and Phil Horton's partnered with the Excalibur Pit School and Chuck Efaw, where they kind of work together with the diversity. But it's more the driver side on the Drive Diversity program, but they do have some crew members.
Cool. All right. You guys got any more questions, or want to let her go get back to enjoying the holidays?
The Christmas holiday, by the way.
Just in case anybody...
In case anybody's wondering who we're talking about.
Oh, goodness. Well, Liz, it was really fun having you on here. You have to keep up with me. Let us know anything good going on. Maybe we'll send Al down to go visit with you and talk to you.
Isn't Tommy's team the one that Hudson Hall works for?
46?
Oh, I thought Hudson was with the 7 car.
No.
Maybe not.
Michael and Ned on the 46.
Oh, okay. Forget that. Never mind.
Anyway, I'll try to shoot him down there to say hi to you. Who knows, might throw you in the Autoweek magazine.
I can do
Thanks for
that.
having me on.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Enjoy the holidays, and we'll talk to you again.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Anyway, a lot of people, they like the fact that we're getting a woman's perspective on this stuff, but it's slowly getting there. More and more women are getting out there.
We should have asked her, and I wish we had thought about it, why they use nitrogen instead of oxygen in tires.
Doesn't change.
Well, I know that.
Oh,
but
you know the answer, but
I'd like, it would have been nice to have gotten an expert's
would
version
you tell her
of
to call back in real quick?
it. Actually, if she would,
We can redial.
yeah.
All right, hang on a second.
When they keep talking about, well, they put in air pressure. Well, it's not really air pressure, but of course that would confuse Larry Reynolds just too damn much. He'd never figured that out.
Overthinks it.
You gotta have more questions than that. Come on. I hate to call Jimmy Hensley cold turkey.
Well, you texted him.
Well, with him not knowing it's me.
Did he text you back?
Let's do a brain
Did he
call
text
on-
you back or something?
Let's just do a break call.
You email him. You don't text him, do you?
Let's call 555-555-555.
Call him up, ask him if his refrigerator's running.
Go catch that sucker. Bad. Shame on you.
Oh, there we go.
Hey, go ahead, Al.
Al.
Oh, hello? You still there?
Yeah, that's me.
I'm sorry. There's one question I thought of, as I often think of questions after people hang up. The general population, the general NASCAR fan base, probably doesn't realize that it's not air that you're dealing with in those tires.
No, we deal with nitrogen.
Right. Do you have any idea when that change was made and why NASCAR doesn't tell their television partners to quit saying air pressure? Do you ever have any idea about why they don't just tell the public what we're doing? Did they ever explain it to you?
The effective bump stops.
I'm not really sure why. I think they just say air pressure because it's easier than saying nitrogen pressure, because it's still the pressure of the amount of air in there. We just use nitrogen because it's more pure. There's not as much moisture in it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's more portable. We don't have to carry generators around with us.
Oh, okay. And they probably would like people to think that what they put in their street car is the same thing they put in a race car. Although we know it's not.
Not.
Well, but they might, NASCAR in its wisdom may think that we want to, the word stock is still part of their title.
Yes.
And they may think that we want people to know that even though the fuel is some Sunoco, you probably don't want to put it in your car.
What was it 114 octane?
A lot of people actually do put it in their cars.
Do they
A
really?
lot of race teams.
Huh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
It doesn't have any short-term effects. Sometimes with newer cars, the long-term effect of running the race fuel is it wears the coating down on your injectors, but cars run just fine with it. And same thing with the nitrogen. A lot of dealerships now put nitrogen in your tires when you get them brand new from the factory.
oh, okay.
So there's still some similarities in it.
Well, okay, people who put racing fuel in their street car, is it because there's a bunch of fuel left over in the tanks on Monday morning and you figure, you know, at $1.89 a gallon, if I can get some fuel for free, I mean, you say short term it doesn't affect the car.
No, there's a lot of people that run, like all the generators on pit road usually run with race fuel.
Oh, okay.
Just because at the end of the race, any fuel we have left over sitting in our cans just goes in drums at our shop. So we just use it for other things. Like sometimes the shop vans will run it just because it's easier just to burn up that gas rather than having it sit there.
There you go.
And it's also free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The price is good.
Yeah.
Hey, you were talking about doing suspension. What's the effect, or is it good or bad having bump stops in a car?
It can be good and bad because the bump stops can help stop the nose from digging in the track. But if you're riding on the bump stops, it can hurt your travel. So sometimes it changes the feel of the car.
Then that's the short answer.
Yeah, that's the shortest answer I can give you.
That's all right. If you want to give a long one, you go right ahead. Somebody had asked me, and I was also curious about it. I used to run late models, and there was a lot of different things we used to do, from putting chains in there to keep the travel from going so far, and all sorts of crazy stuff. Now, did you ever used to race any at all, or you just went straight into working on the cars?
I've never really raced. I've done like go-kart stuff here and there, but I've always just preferred to work on them over race them. I also would rather try to get them fast than be the one trying to go fast.
Okay. Any more questions, guys?
No, I think that's it.
You sure this time?
I'm through.
Thank you for calling back, Liz.
Thanks for having me.
There'll be a special little candy cane on your tree somewhere.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
It's going to think you crazy, Al.
Well, that's
It's nothing new.
fine. Right.
Nothing new.
All right, we got.
So it doesn't sound that complicated, does it? The tire girl, but it's a lot to it.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Sounds like they keep her busy. She sounds like she's versatile. So
Now, when you do tire pressure in your Legends car, you use what type of tire gauge?
Just normal tire gauge.
Regular tire gauge.
Yeah.
You do know these guys use digital ones. They go down into the hundreds.
I wish we had that.
You know. But I've got one that goes down to the tenths, but those you can buy regular off the shelf if you know where to look. But yeah, so they've got stuff that's really intense, and since you're using nitrogen, and nitrogen doesn't expand as much when you're racing, but y'all use nitrogen in your tires, don't you?
it depends on who's
not sure.
doing.
Who's doing the tires?
People do different things. We put air in our tires, but we have worked with other people that put nitrogen in the tires, and a lot of people we race against put nitrogen in the tires.
Yeah, we always had a big old cylinder full of nitrogen. It was always in the
Yeah,
in the truck or.
yeah. We had nitrogen in the tires this summer. The year before that, we had air.
Yeah.
So it just depends on who you're working with and
How they want to
what
do
they
it.
do.
Yeah, because when you go and do laps and you put regular air in it, you'll see the difference of how much it grows than if you take it all out and put nitrogen in it and see how much it doesn't grow. That way you can keep your
Yeah, I was actually thinking, so
Also-
with the tires sitting out, like if they're not covering them up, when they're sitting out in the sun, they've got sets of tires back behind the pit box. You know, I was wondering if the heat of the summer, you know, it's blazing hot out there, black tires sitting on black asphalt, how much that temperature would change the air pressure. And I'm assuming they check the pressures before they slap the tires on,
oh yeah.
minutes before they put tires on a car, so it's exact. But still,
literally about 2 laps before they get ready to come in for a pit
Yeah.
stop, they'll be over there.
but I don't know if nitrogen, maybe it doesn't, you know, sitting out there getting hot and change the pressure in the tires, or it doesn't really matter. They're all sort of sitting out there generic,
Yeah,
and we'll set the pressure just before they get here.
yeah, because the heat from the sun, you might get 100, 120, 140 max. But when you're talking 200 and some degrees on the
Track,
tread
yeah.
when you're racing,
Yeah.
so that little bit ain't going to bother the
Exactly.
nitrogen, since the nitrogen at 200 plus degrees doesn't do much.
Well, and like I said, they may have them all the sets sitting on the track
Yeah,
at a generic pressure, and then okay, this is the next set we're about to use. This is what we're going with. Whoever's on the tires better get there and get it set right.
yeah.
Well, we got them. Okay, we checked it. You know, it's got the right pressure in it. That's what you asked for right now. This set's going on the car right now.
Because, at the small tracks, I know at Langley, when you were racing and you got new tires, they went into an area and you couldn't put them on the car till it was time. And anything you wanted to do, you had to do while it was there in the holding area. And then once it was time, you could do whatever. So you could sit there and play with your tire pressures and everything. Because we used to blow them up to, say for instance, 30 pounds, take a reading, bring it back down, take a reading, bring it back down, take a reading, and get an idea of what's going to happen as it goes along.
So you realize we spent that entire segment talking about that person whose name did not ever come up, but we did mention a holiday coming up, didn't we? I hope nobody misunderstands that we know who we were talking about.
Yeah,
We just don't want to give that person
Creditation.
more notice than she
yeah.
deserves,
No more credit than,
particularly at Christmas time.
yeah. Yeah, and we never talked about In-N-Out
But if
burgers
people are
either.
good at reading between the lines, they know what
We
we're
would have
doing.
talked about her in
We got
July or August,
Yeah.
but you know, Christmas time we will.
Let's just say her name was not April.
Right, exactly. Right. Or June, or May,
Right.
or Valentine, or whatever.
Uh-huh.
All right, who we got next?
Well, it would have been Jimmy Hensley.
No, we weren't. I
know. I had a spot for him.
Right, I hope we were. But we were going to get Monty,
Yeah, we were going to get him at 7:45.
which is right about now.
It is already?
Yeah. Time flies when you have
Cranking
fun.
right along.
We called him, he called us.
We'll go ahead and call him. I'll throw the number up there on there for you.
It's a prank call.
Dude, what's his
What's
name?
another
Does that
good
all the time. Oh God. Excuse me.
I was glad to hear her say that it took 2 years to kind of undo the damage that unnamed person had done.
Fun.
I think she was on this program one time,
I think she was too.
but it wasn't around Christmas time.
No. I'm sure you would have reminded us.
Hello.
Hey, Monty, how are you?
Fine. How are you, Al?
Good. First time we've talked to you since the championship was decided at Homestead. And as always, we enjoy your take, your outlook, your view on things such as the first obvious question: is a driver who only ran 2/3 of the season deserving to be the champion?
Well, they had rules that said not, And because NASCAR was ridden by angst by having an unsafe wall in Daytona, they cut him a waiver. I mean, the fact of the matter is that if it were me, I wouldn't have granted that exception, but they did, and the rules that existed regarding his misfortune, he complied with them and went through there. So, I mean, what's done is done, but from a strict constructionist view, which is not one that I often espouse in many things, I mean, hell, this championship's as legitimate as any other. And I mean, you know my feeling about the chase.
Oh, yeah.
And so I mean, hell, they might as well just go all the way. I think maybe they ought to take the last 4 finalists and throw them in shark-infested waters and see who comes out on the beach. I don't know.
Monty, I'm going to ask one last question about this particular topic, and then we'll move on to something better. If Kyle Busch had been injured the following weekend at Atlanta, which is not an ISC track, and if he'd been injured in a basic car-to-car crash, which did not involve the absence of soft walls, and it had been just a regular racing accident like we've seen for years, would that have made NASCAR's waiver any more difficult for them to come up with?
Well, in hindsight it does, but that's because we've gone through a process where they set standards from back then. I mean, when you sit there and say if it had been an ISC track, or if it hadn't, I think that when you have sort of conspiratorial views on things like that before you proceed too much, I think that you have to look if there's any evidence at all that is the case. Because other than that, it makes sense to me, type thing. So, I really can't say. I mean, when you sit there and say, okay, if what you just said had been the case, then it would not have complied with what was used as the rationale for cutting him a break. But if the circumstances had been different, the solution may have been different. So that's just my point there.
Okay.
All right, hey Monty, this is Collin Brown, local electric car driver in Virginia. So, how do you prepare for interviews that you need to do as part of your stories that you're writing?
Well, today, as a matter of fact, I've been busy all day today because I wrote a Bleacher Report column today, and to be honest, with the way NASCAR is for me now, writing about NASCAR is sort of like writing some paper in college because it's sort of what would have been library research is now internet research. And so the difficulty that I often have, not like on the story today, which was about whether now that he's champion and now that he's had this sort of long shot championship, whether it will improve Kyle Busch's standing with the fans. And so, I had squirreled away a lot of material. That's what I do now. I squirrel away material because I'm not at the track to sniff out stuff myself, and one just has to do the best that you can do. I would say that even at the track, there are less people sniffing out things than perhaps once there were.
So, NASCAR tries to make the drivers accessible. What else do you think they could do to improve the conditions for the print media to do their job?
The problem is not the amount of accessibility, it's the kind of accessibility. I'm sure that Al can back me up on this because everything has been so geared away from the way it used to be that during the last few years of my being out on the circuit, traveling all over the country, it became a lot less intimate because a great deal higher percentage of the material you have comes from press conferences. And it's now a lot harder to have a situation where you talk to a driver one-on-one or in just a small audience. You know, it used to be very common, like at least once a week, where we would go up in the front of the hall or go to the motor coach and talk to the guys. Now everything's very formal. You know, if you got invited out to dinner with a driver, you would think that maybe you would get a chance to get to know the guy, but the odds are in this day and time that all you're really going to is yet another press conference where the food happens to be better. So, you know, it's almost gotten where the old-time style, you know, where some guy would whisper to you and come over and say, you didn't hear this from me, but this is going on, and then you delve into it. Nowadays, particularly and also the social media age, it's much more difficult to have something that nobody else has, you know, but probably because most of the people who have something nobody else has have this unbelievable desire to tell everybody else through word. It used to be just through word of mouth. Now it's through word of internet. So, excuse me, the way that you do it to do the job is a lot different than the way it used to be.
So, what was it that got you into writing for NASCAR?
Well, I think I had a great advantage because I grew up in a part of the country where it's very popular. When I was a little boy, NASCAR was in the South, or in upstate South Carolina, NASCAR was always a mainstream sport. I think it's about the same way it's always been. It's just that nationwide now, it's much more popular. But it was always a mainstream sport in the South. And so when I started covering NASCAR, the advantage that I had was that many of my colleagues, particularly at that time when it was changing a lot, many of my colleagues were people who didn't know anything about racing till they were assigned to it. And they learned all about it now, but they lacked historical perspective. And I think the fact that since I was my earliest memory, you know, I saw Fireball Roberts racing a modified on a quarter-mile dirt track when I was about 5 years old. And so that was a great advantage. And then when, in the early 90s, I decided that in order to advance my career, I needed to specialize. And so I sort of worked my way by doing short track stuff part-time when I was mainly working desk at one paper, or otherwise, I worked my way into covering racing every chance I got, I was able to get a job first at the Spartanburg Herald, and then for most of my career at the Gaston Gazette, a job in which I covered the sport regularly, and that gave me an opportunity to be sort of, in all frankness, I have to say, sort of like a bigger fish in a smaller pond, as you know. And so, but I mean, I loved racing, and I knew a lot about it, and so it was natural that I would be adept at it.
So, what advice would you give to somebody who's looking to get involved with the sport, or and what do you find to be the most challenging thing about being a writer?
Well, particularly, I think that it doesn't matter what you do that is somewhat considered creative. It's a real moving target right now. I like novels. I just got a deal. I'll have another new novel out in probably February, I'm guessing. But you know, we live in a world now where, you know, bookstores are closing and Kindles are selling, and people read ebooks, and then there's it's difficult to make it because we have a constantly larger pie that's being divided into smaller pieces, and so self-publishing and ebook just throws that many more books into the market. Well, there's so many different ways of communication. And the difficulty becomes that as all this changes, I'm afraid that the last people who get rich off it are the people who create it. And I'm not a businessman. I probably don't deserve to make a whole lot of money, but I also know that it's getting harder, and you have to do a lot of things. And as far as if you want to get in racing and do that, well, I'm not sure, since I'm not getting started now, and I'm not trying to to sort of get back into it. I'm not sure that I know the current terrain, but I think that probably the shot you've got, if your goal in life is to be a beat reporter covering NASCAR or whatever, I think you've just got to go do it and maybe start out volunteer and try to impress somebody and do just like I did and work your way into a situation where somebody notices your work and does something to help you. And I don't know. I think beyond that, you've got to go out and I think it's very difficult nowadays, probably between trying to show your ability and do the best you can, impress people, but also to sort of impress people who can do things for you where you might have to cozy up to them a little bit more. You know, I used to, when I was covering NASCAR, I think I'm almost positive I've told Al this before, I used to have people who would come up to me, and I thought it was one of those sort of like, they'd say, "Boy, I really like the way you cover racing." "Well, thank you very much." And they'd say, "I sure wish I could cover racing the way you do." And I would say, "Well, why can't you?" And they'd say, "Oh, they take my heart card." And every time somebody told me that, I would think, how do you know? Do you think that I know something on the France family? You know, that I'm somehow untouchable? What did I do that allowed me the carte blanche to write things the way I saw them? So I think that comes into play too, because if there's that many people out in the business who seem to be scared of their ability to tell the truth, and I'm the one that's on the sidelines and I'm not doing it anymore, at least not for a full-time living, maybe I just don't know enough to give that advice now. There's a million ways that I've become an old fogey, you know, that the world has passed me by.
You know, Monty, December 31st of this year will be a dark day for the journalists in Daytona Beach. Do you know why?
No, I don't, but I told you I was uninformed.
You may have heard this. Donna is retiring.
Oh yeah, that's right. I did. You had told me that.
Yeah.
I didn't really know that it was precisely the end of the year, but I do also. There used to be a whole generation of people like Donna Friesman.
Yeah.
You know, all the people that you dealt with at the track, that you better not cross them, and you needed to get along with them, but they would do things for you, but they just wanted to know you.
Right. Exactly.
And when you know, a guy like me was starting out covering racing, and you went by the windows to pick up your stuff, and you begged that you needed this, and you know, if they didn't give me a pass to get me there, what in the world I got the business being here for? You really, people like Donna, that's the most important person at the track that you need to have on your side.
I have
nothing like that.
Yeah, I have often said that when Donna retires, I may retire, because I cannot tell you how many times in 45 years she's bailed me out one way or another. And I'm sure she's bailed out everybody at some point. But let me tell you what, don't ever cross her.
Oh, I know, that's absolutely true. So by the way, I always think, and I also love Myra Falconberry.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
But I mean, there used to be every track used to have someone like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, now I guess it's pretty much, I don't know, I guess it's probably, I never did have any trouble getting access, but I mean, I guess now it's probably one of those things where what credentials you get probably comes from some instantaneous readout of how many hits your last tweet got or something, and it's all pretty much, and it's probably central, you know, it's all centralized now.
Yeah.
And so NASCAR's making all those decisions, but I mean, you know, it's just a different way, like everything else in life. It's the same reason that I got a $30 speeding ticket about a month ago. The first one I had in 10 years, and it was $30. And because it's in the most crooked, and there was $188 in court fees, which of course they were not spending. And so the amount to pay the ticket was 7 times what the amount of the ticket was.
It wasn't
That's about the way the whole world is right now, NASCAR included.
It wasn't in Carlisle, was it?
No, North Carolina actually. It's funny that I was driving through western North Carolina.
Oh, okay.
And just this past weekend, I saw a big thing on the network TV about how states are doing that. and North Carolina had the highest tack on of it, 7 times what the price of the ticket is. And so I just went, just my luck. That'd be out of 50 states in the union, that'd be the one I'd get caught for 60 and a 45.
Because I'm sure you've driven through Carlisle hundreds of times in your life.
But Carlisle that's actually been gone for 30 years. Carlisle was such a famous speed trap that I think that the bad guy, the constable over there, or whatever, I believe he went to prison at some point. But it was a big scandal about him taking money under the table. He'd been taking money over the table for 30 years, and so it's actually I go through Carlisle quite a bit because if I'm going to Charlotte, that's the best way to go to the country there.
Every time I come,
So I think it's actually true. I still, by the way, 30 years later, don't go the speed limit going through there. But I haven't seen anybody stopped in 20 years, I bet.
but every time I come to see you, coming or going, I go through Carlisle, and they got some money from me about 25 years ago.
Yeah, there was Collin back then. He was famous.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I guess every state probably knows where they are. Holly Hill near Darlington's another one.
Mm-hmm.
And MacD.
Is this worse than Emporia, Virginia?
I haven't been through Emporia, Virginia. Last time I was through Emporia, Virginia, I was riding in a stock car hauler.
Oh, okay.
Wow, that's a famous speed trap if you happen to ever go through there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Monty, it was good to hear from you again, friend. I hadn't seen you since the homecoming weekend.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. I wish I let you get away, and I went over wandering away, and I didn't ever get to say real bye. But I really enjoyed seeing you. It was a good day.
Yeah, you were down talking to your high school coach.
That's right. That's right. I remember.
Yeah.
Turned around, you'd already gone. I knew you were leaving, but I let time get away from
That's
you.
right. Listen, coming up in January, there's a dry day between the end of the NMPA and the beginning of the media tour. Monday the 19th or 20th maybe. We'll come down and have lunch at Fats if you want to. Or
Okay.
I'll come to Clinton. I'll come all the way to town.
Whatever. I'm all down here. I can't tell you how much. I spend so much of my time holed up in the house typing away that all the time I get out, I've been covering high school basketball and football games. And that's invaluable to me because it just helps to get out and circulate in the community.
Yeah. And by the way, I don't know if I told you this, I enjoyed meeting your mom at the motel.
Oh yeah, my mom's great.
We had a
She assures me that my next novel is the best one.
Okay, good.
Since she's the only one besides me who's read it, that's all I have to go by.
And I must admit that she is a bit smaller than I would expect knowing you.
Yes, well, you didn't know my father.
Okay.
Yeah.
Monty, as always, for 40-some years, it's been a pleasure talking to you again. And I'll come see you next month. We'll have lunch at either Steamers or the Fats on the highway.
I'm just glad there's still people out there.
Well, believe me.
Talking to me.
Let me tell you what.
Yeah.
I'll tell you when we're going to miss you the most. We're going to miss you the most when the two candidates finally get decided and you and John Singler are not in the same room at the same time. That's when we're going to miss you the most.
By the way, here's something else you missed me at. If you got just a minute.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah. All right. Last night I was at a high school basketball game. And at Lawrence High School, they have somebody different singing the national anthem from the student body.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have a little bit of experience. I have sung the national anthem at a couple of ball games. And I'm always, so anyway, when you start listening and you know that in the second line of the song, the person is never going to make it. Because I know that song, and if you drag in the low registers, I can't get the high ones.
Oh, yeah.
I can sing it, but only I can only sing it in D. All right, so I know this, and I'm sitting there, and this little girl is at the scores table holding a microphone, and she is like the second line of the song she's about to crack. And so I just braced for the wreck, and when she got to the end, and the crowd chanted the rest of the song. And she leaned over and about to collapse on the scorer's table and started squalling. And friends came up there and it delayed the start of the basketball game because she was overwhelmed with the humiliation. So that's the type of stuff I get to see now. All right, thanks for having me.
Hey, Monty, one more quick question. Somebody was asking me about, with all the people you've known, who's actually gone and did, how can I say it, pushed further to do what needed to be done.
Now, when you say who, what do you mean by, when you're talking about,
Drivers
the sport, who has gone farther on what needs to be done?
Yeah, who's pushed the hardest to make what happened happen?
I don't know that much of anybody has done what needs to be happening because most of what's changed in racing, I like it better the way it used to be. It's hard for me to give a credit to that. It seems like the whole world. I mean, nothing surprises me. To me, it's the most outlandish. It goes beyond. I mean, it actually, to me, a small part of it is the chase because that's the way it's decided. I mean, but. To me, the administration of races, I get so tired of how nobody ever talks about. They all talk about how much better competition was. And they never talk about the fact that the rules that govern racing now were in place in 1975, that that nobody would ever lose a lap either. And so, to me, it's just a different sport. It's still a good sport. It's still a sport that I like and one that I always will. But, maybe it's just that I'm getting old and set in my ways, but to me, there's not any hope of racing going in the right direction.
Okay,
That much I know.
so pretty much you're of the belief that the chase didn't work out the way it should have.
Well, I think that it is probably popular among those that remain. But the fact is that the chase began in 2004. And the interest in NASCAR has tailed off ever since. And if you look at about right before the chase, I think you'll find that the crowds at the track and the crowds on the television are about half what they were in 2003. So that's my point. So I do believe, of those that haven't run off, everybody loves the chase. Those are the ones who have survived. Those are the ones who have prospered. But I get tired of everybody I see wanting to come over there and talk my head off about how come they don't watch the races anymore. And I also think that I'm so grateful because all the people who write me and tell me they don't care about racing, but they still read what I write. So that's very flattering. It also makes me suspect that a lot of them are fizzing a little bit.
All right, Monty. Have a good Christmas down in Clinton. Give everybody my regards. And I will see you next month, for sure.
All right, Al. Thanks all y'all for having me.
Glad to have you
Love
always.
to have you on there, Monty.
Thanks, Monty. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right.
He's definitely a good storyteller.
Oh, he's great.
Funny.
What?
So now he feels like I'm reading between the lines, but I don't think it's that hard to do. He feels like everything is so packaged now. With everything's got to be a press conference, everything's got to be so formal. So NASCAR, in doing so, is basically sterilizing the sport. It sounds like. I mean,
NASCAR doesn't necessarily make drivers do press conferences. In other words, what I'm saying is, drivers will stop and talk to you if there's only 2 or 3 of you standing by a stack of tires. But if something important's got to be said, NASCAR wants them to come in and tell everybody at one time. You can still occasionally get something on the QT.
Like your good old friend Danica having to come in every race.
Whatever. Yeah, right. Thank God they got rid of that. So
Somebody wanted to know who did you look up to when you started doing this stuff?
I mean, writing wise or racing wise?
You're racing and racing and writing stuff. Who did you look up to?
Well, I don't understand the question.
I mean, like we always ask somebody, who did they look up? Who was their mentor?
Oh, I didn't know who there was nobody around here doing racing riding when I started. So,
Other than Richard Petty teaching you about opening
well, yeah,
car
I
doors and
mean,
stuff
Petty
like that
was
on
the guy I
race
looked
cars.
up to in all respects, but there's a whole 40 years of journalists. If he were starting this year, today, there's a whole slew of people he could look up to because they were out there. When I was doing it, there was nobody out there. There were a few, but not many.
Were a lot of them as smart as you were about racing?
Hardly anybody covered all the races back then.
I'm leading to a
I know what
question.
you are. We're gonna go eat.
You don't want to tell that Dover story. All right. I enjoyed everybody being with us tonight. If we don't see y'all next week, or you don't get a chance to tune in, everybody have a nice Merry Christmas, and we will catch everybody next week if you can tune in for Let's Talk Racing. See ya!